Hi BookTube. So I know I didn't film any videos in the month of November, at least I don't think I did, but I didn't want to pass up an opportunity to talk about my favorite books of nonfiction November. I read a total of 37 books, and at least 30 of them were nonfiction. And the first two I'm going to be talking about are rereads. This first one here is Robert A. Caro's The Years of Lyndon Johnson, Master of the Senate. This is book 3 in his, I think, quartet of, these like 4 or 5. I've only read this one though. I read this years ago and I wanted to reread it. It's 1,166 pages. I wish I could pass it on to each of you so you could feel how heavy this book is. It's so heavy that around a quarter of the way through I had to switch to an ebook. Luckily my library had a copy because I couldn't deal with the length. I mean, not length, the heft of it. But the length is well worth it. Caro is so detailed in his writing. He'll mention someone that Johnson is dealing with or working with, trying to use, whatever. And I feel like in a typical biography or book, you'll get maybe a paragraph, maybe a couple pages on that side character, But Caro, he'll dedicate a whole chapter to you really just getting to know his whole world and his interaction with these people. And so you'll get a little mini biography of the people he's working with. Johnson is not a likable person. He's not someone I could ever picture being friends with. He was very rude, very manipulative. Just no holds barred. He is gonna do what he has to climb the ladder kind of thing. He was very driven. So I will give him that. And this focuses on his life in the Senate. It starts out giving you a little brief summary of his beginning years, as a kid growing up in Texas, House of Representatives. You get a bit more of that, and then it focuses full on how he got into the Senate, then how he became this huge leader of the Senate, even though he was a rookie. He climbed the ladder so quickly. So yeah, this is very well written. It's a huge book, and so I don't want to go into too much depth here because I have quite a few books I want to talk about, but I did want to make my hands hurting right now just holding this up. But yes, and here is a little end paper, so I wanted to show this is the Senate. And it even I think there's at least a chapter in here dedicated to what the Senate looks like, talking about the wallpaper and the desk. And that I know it can sound kind of boring, but it isn't. It's very interesting. So yeah, I would highly recommend this book. I also, in the month of December, I've read Robert A. Caro's book, I think it's called Working a Life. And I'll talk about that when I do my weekly wrap up for December. There's a little teaser there. Then my other reread was Betty McDonald's The Egg and I. And see if we can get it here. And I read this on ebook. And this, I read a couple years ago. I don't know the exact date. It doesn't really matter. But this is a much shorter book. Probably around 300 pages or so. This is following Betty McDonald. She's married. And she is living in the wilds of Washington against the Olympic Mountains. And so it's raining all the time. And she's just it's the sopping wet constant drizzle, which I am currently in right now, living in Portland. It's for sure the rainy season. And so no matter how much it rains, how muddy and mucky it is or dark, she still has to work on the farm. She marries her husband and doesn't know what she's getting herself into, because he springs it on her in a way of what he's always wanted to do is run a chicken farm. And before that, he was in the military. So this is kind of a total shift for her. She's not always been, but she at the time is living in Seattle. So it's a big change. And so she doesn't know anyone. And so the neighbors are not always to her liking. But what are you going to do in a small town? And she's not even living in a town. She's living at least 30 minutes away from the town. And so her neighbors. So she one of them, it's stuck in my mind. For one of them, she's talking about how she's very efficient, and she's always keeping her house neat as a pin, and she's canning all of her fruits and vegetables, so she's not wasting anything. But she talks about how the peach, I think it was the peaches that she has jarred, taste like glue. Like, they look beautiful, but they taste like glue. And I was just laughing my head off at her descriptions. And then her other neighbors are very needy. Are the exact opposite of her other neighbor, where their house is constantly a wreck. There's just debris and things piled up all over the place. And the husband can't hardly do anything. He's constantly relying on other neighbors to help chip in, even though he has, I don't even know how many kids. I have to remember, like, as a review, this is like a month ago or so, like, I don't know, 5-10 kids, but none of them, like, they're all like worthless kind of thing. Like, they're not helping, and there's, grown kids. They're not like, itty bitty kids. So yeah, it's just a funny read. If you've never read Betty McDonald, or if you've only read her like Mrs. Pigglewiggle books, this is different, and yeah, it's just a delight to read. So I'll switch back to talking about some of my physical books before going to ebooks. And so I have Siesta Lane, One Cabin, No Running Water, and A Year Living Green by Amy Minato. And this I found at I'm hitting myself with it. I found at a library book sale. It has like a little sticker and anything like that. But I'm so glad I stumbled upon this book. She writes very poetically, and after I read this book, I realized why, because I was looking into a little bit of her biography, and she's also written like 1 or 2 poetry collections as well, and I can for sure see that in this book. She is living in Eugene, Oregon, and decides, like, even though Eugene is not that big of a town, or not that big of a city, she wants to get out into the country. And so she hunts around and finds where there is there's like a main house that has electricity, running water, kitchen, but there's little, I think 5 or 6 cabins that are like circling around it, and they are just like bunk houses kind of thing, where you just have a bed and you have like a fireplace where you can put, you can heat up your place, and like that's it. Excuse me. There's no electricity. I mean, either there's no electricity, there's no anything. It's just very simple, but you can still go to the main house for things. But the main house is shared by the 5 or 6 cabins there, and so I just found this book delightful. She's like talking about looking out her, because there's no TV, there's no Wi-Fi or internet, and so she's like looking out her window and describing what's taking place, or going on walks in the area, and especially her interactions with her, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like roommates, even though she's not living with any of them, and just camaraderie that they have, and just the different personalities involved, and who would seek out that kind of lifestyle. And I really enjoyed this book, and she just had a way with words that I liked. Let's see, I have First Person Rural, Essays of a Sometime Farmer by Noel Perrin. This is an older book. Oh, here he is on the back with his cows, because he also is a farmer, but he left New York City to move to the wilds of Vermont, and this came out in 1978. These are like little short essays. Let's see if I can give you, are they titled? I can't even remember. Let's see here. So you have like the grades of maple syrup, and he's going to describe like the ABC that you'll sometimes see in grocery stores of, what all that entails, like real milk, making butter in the kitchen, sugaring on $15 a year, buying a pickup truck. So like little like tidbits, little, what am I trying to say here? Little topics that you think, like, who can write 1 page, much less 5 pages on this, and then make it interesting. But he does it. And I'm for sure looking up more of his books to see if I can purchase them. Because, yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's not like, it's just little simple stories that if you're in the mood for something like that, or especially like kind of like the old-timey lifestyle, even though this is taking place like almost in 1980. So it's not like that old-timey. But, it was a nice read. And then my last physical book here is Autumn Across America by Edwin Way Teale. Talking about my favorite books, I love Teale's writing. And this is his journey with his wife going from New England across America here to Oregon, and then down the coast of California. There's a map here, and I wonder if the camera will pick this up or no, because it includes all 4 he has this is a series, so he drove in the spring, autumn, fall, and winter. So this has all of it on here, but you get the idea. He's like looping around, across America. But yeah, this was just a delight to read. I read his summer book, and I read this in autumn, and then I picked up his winter book, so I'm all ready to go, and I'm going to start that on December 21st. But yeah, this was just great. I wish I had the money and the means and the time just to take like just even a month off and just travel around and just immerse myself in the nature of, you know, watching the different seasons in the different areas, because he's going across, and so you can, you know, kind of sort of, you know, he's experiencing the same temperatures and whatnot in the different states, but it looks different. You know, there's different animals he's coming across, different, you know, creatures and things like that. So yeah, really enjoyed that one. And then we go back over here. So one that was good, but I wouldn't exactly say delightful or necessarily enjoyable. That's Amity and Prosperity, One Family and the Fracturing of America by Eliza Griswold. Let's see if I can pick that up here. It's a little bit dark, but it was the white. It's hard to get that on here. It's just winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and actually this one, I think, I'm pretty sure won the Pulitzer Prize. I just noticed that. Because, yeah, with an ebook, I don't pay attention to covers that much until I'm making a video about it. Anyway, with this one, it's talking about a family who is living in Pennsylvania, like 30 minutes to an hour south of Pittsburgh. So, you know, not that too far out in the boondocks or anything like that. But they're talking about their water quality, because they're living on some land, and everyone's like signing up to have this drilling take place for the coal, and so they'll get some money from it. So everyone's doing it. So she does her due diligence as best she can before she signs the papers, to make sure that if something goes wrong, that she will at least have access to clean water. So they'll bring something in, or they'll do something to fix it. So because she grew up with, not in the same area, but she grew up with water that was iffy, or, you know, undrinkable water. So as an adult, she wants to make sure that she, you know, won't have that happen again. And this story takes place, you know, it's not in the 1900s, it's not 2000s, it's 2010. So when this is happening, which is just astonishing to me. Because these big companies go do the drilling, and it's on a hill above her land, above all of her neighbors' lands. And so when they have these like ponds of liquid from the fracking, and there's these liners underneath. And what's happening is there was like a tear in the lining, and there was two layers of this lining, and I went through all of it. And it was known about, documented, and everything, acknowledged by the workers for months and months, years, and they still were fighting, being responsible for the destruction of not only this woman's property, but the health of herself and her children, especially her son, who was severely affected for like quite a bit of time. They weren't sure exactly what was, you know, before they found out, you know, what was going on. Like, what's wrong with him, because he was losing weight and just constantly had an upset stomach and not being able to eat, and got really, really thin. And then he had all these random things happening, like rashes, sores in his mouth, and then everyone else in their family started getting sick as well. And their animals started dying, their horses, and they had goats and dogs and cats. Maybe not cats, I can't remember. Probably, but yeah, we also talk about their neighbors' animals too as well, so I think I'm jumbling all that up. But, so yeah, this was just astonishing for me to read, considering, you know, when it took place. And, yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Brockovich. Is that the name? Like in the California, how she was doing, you discovering, and I think she became like a lawyer, and brought it to court of the water quality in California. So this is along the same lines. And she talks about, you know, should she hire her or like the firm in California, but she wanted to stay local. And so it also features her lawyer and what steps they take to combat this, you know, big energy electrical, you know, company kind of thing that's doing the drilling. Yeah, this was, if you're, you know, can stomach that kind of thing, then yeah, I for sure think this is worth the read. The next one is Dear Men, 7 Years of Living in the Wild by Jeffrey DeLorme. And this book just came out in 2022. I think back in September. I can't remember. A couple months ago. This was translated. Does it list the translator on here? No, it doesn't. It was translated from the French because this takes place near Normandy, France. And he grows up. His house faces his backyard has a forest, and so he grew up like halfway through elementary school being homeschooled, and so he took a lot of time. He had a lot of time on his hands, and so he would always like make little excursions out into the woods as a kid. And then when he became an adult, he just, like around 18, he decides to spend his full time out there because he prefers the company of the deer and the animals than he does his home life and, you know, the people in his town. And so this is his journey of how can you survive on very little, because it's not like he's bringing a tent. It's not like he's bringing much provisions at all. He has some small provisions, but he talks about, you know, which leaves to eat, which berries to eat. And this is like through the winter too, and like different barks and stuff. So he's kind of like being one with the deer, which I found just fascinating because I read like, you know, nature books where it's like, you know, in a cabin, you know, alone in the woods kind of thing, but not when you're, you know, living without any kind of shelter. That was a different, you know, twist for me to read, and not to mention like 7 years in the forest like that. He does mention that he only did 1 year full time with zero contact of going outside of the woods. The other 6 years he made a couple of times, like I think once a month or so, he would go warm up, you know, stock up on food, like, you know, like load in the calories and the heat up. So like, and then go out. And he talks also about, which I thought was fascinating, because again, he doesn't have any blankets or anything like that. And so he talks about during the winter, he tried to sleep through the night as best he could, but he kept waking up like hypothermic, you know, getting hypothermia because his body got so cold. And so he's decided to, again, kind of act like the deer and only getting like 30 minutes to an hour sleep, waking up, moving around, you know, go foraging, go back to sleep, and like throughout the day and night, which would be mind numbing to me. But yeah, I thought that was fascinating as well. So yeah, I for sure. Again, I know I keep saying this. I would recommend all these books. Again, these are my favorite books of the month. I have The Home Ranch by Ralph Moody. This is, I think, book 3 or 4 in his series, and it's all about his family moves from New England to Colorado, and this is way back when like Denver was just a little tiny little town. And so in this one, he is what is he, like, I think 12 or 13, something like that, maybe a little bit older, and he is going off. His family is like struggling with money because his father, I don't want to give anything away, but his father's out of the picture, let's say, and so he needs to help raise some money for his sisters, his mom, who are also trying to do their best they can to scrounge up some money. And so he gets this approval from his mom to go off with this like cattle ranch out for like the whole entire summer, from the day his school ends in June all the way till the first day of school. He's gone that whole entire time, and he's learning a lot from like the leader. And it's not just that he learned from him, but when he signed up for this job, he thought he was okay the whole entire time. He's going to be out, you know, herding cattle, out with, you know, the cowboys. But in fact, most of the time he found that he was needed at the home ranch location. And so he learns a lot from this little girl who's so sassy and learning him a few things, you know. So yeah, I really like this book. I really liked the whole series. It was just like a really good book. And then the last one here is The Revolutionary Samuel Adams by Stacy Schiff. I've read all of her books and I've loved each of them. This is focusing on Samuel Adams and like the beer guy. Like, I've never read a biography of him. I've read John Adams by David McCullough, but I've never read a Samuel Adams biography. And yeah, this was just great. I don't know exactly what to say. It's his life and times. He was a huge. I feel like he was one of the main reasons why we had the revolution when we did, and how, I mean, he was kind of like the puppet master. I think maybe she even used those terms in this book of really pulling these strings to make all this happen, and get the players in the right spot to get John Adams, Washington, all these people to to get the momentum going, get the people in the town, in the mindset of this, and so yeah, I think the prologue or the first chapter talks about how, because she kind of like does a little summary before getting into his life, and talks about how like he wasn't even like the star of the show when it was all said and done, and like he like left this group, and he was just kind of, she said she could like picture him like scurrying off like, yay, this is done. I'm probably not doing justice to her picture there, but yeah, this just the feel I get from, she really makes me feel like I know him, and she just does a great job of of researching and writing her books. So yeah, those were my favorites for Nonfiction November. I wish I could talk about all 37, but I feel like we would be here for at least an hour, because I read some great books. Yeah, I will leave a link in the description below to my Goodreads if you ever want to follow me there. I don't tend to write any reviews. I think I really should do better with that, because I don't star rate my books. So yeah, if you want to see what I'm reading at any given time, then follow me there. But anyway, let me know if you've read any of these books, or what were your favorite books from Nonfiction November, or just November in general. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks, BookTube.